I am Aria Finch, 29 years old, living in Cedar Hollow, Vermont, a quiet town where every season wears a different shade of cold, and the river learns my name from the way I listen to it when the shop door sighs shut behind me at night. Because I own Moonlight Pages, a small bookstore that smells like old paper and coffee, and I am good at listening to people even when I am pretending not to, which is a strange skill that has kept me alive more times than I care to admit. And I am also stubborn as a maple tree in late autumn when the first frost comes. A stubborn woman who keeps a routine of shelves and windows and quiet mornings, and I am content until I am not. Because the man I love is not content to let our life stay simple and safe. And that is when the trouble begins to creep into Cedar Hollow like a shadow that wears a familiar face. And that man is named Cole, the person I have given my trust to. A man who knows every corner of my town as if it were a map of his own heart, and he is charming in a way that makes the air seem lighter when he smiles. And I do not realize the danger he hides until the world around me begins to tilt, and the pieces of my life do not fit together anymore. Which is how the story begins, with a whisper of something not right masquerading as a plan, and the plan is this. Cole tells me that his brother will visit for 1 week, and his cousin will visit for another week. A simple family visit that will keep our home busy and our dinner table loud with laughter. And I ask him, why could they not come together? Why must there be 2 visits, 2 separate weeks? And he says they do not get along. Which makes no sense to me, because in a town like ours you do not keep a family apart for petty quarrels, you do not arrange your life around avoidable slights. But I bite back my questions and I smile, because I want to believe him, and I want the house to stay whole, and I want the life I have built with him to keep its shape. And so I let him plan, and I watch the calendar in the kitchen spell out the days in a neat line, and I pretend that this is normal, even as the clock in my chest ticks louder and louder. And then the truth slides in like a cold draft through a loose window, because the 2 weeks arrive with a different visitor altogether. A person from a nearby island, a woman named Serena who does not look like she is here to borrow sugar or to borrow silence. She is here to borrow a future. And when I finally meet Serena, I hear a different truth that feels like a blow. For she tells me she is in a relationship with Cole, and she says it without flinching, with a calm and practical tone that makes me feel like an audience member in a play where I am suddenly not sure what character I am supposed to play. And I am not ready to accept the world that has suddenly flipped on its back. So I reach out to Serena, a woman who has become my rival in a game that I did not know was being played. And I tell her plainly that I am in a relationship with Cole, and I ask her what she plans to do with this rumor and this connection. And she speaks with surprising bluntness and says she is better than him, that she will gather her things and go. And she also confesses that she is not interested in a casual life or in being a stepping stone. And then she drops a line that makes me feel as if a door has been slammed in my face. She says that I am only a friend with benefits to Cole in his eyes, a label that makes my heart sting because I have believed in so much more. And then she drops the revelation that she means to move with him to America, that her plan is not to stay and fight but to leave. And in that moment, my mind fills with questions I do not have time to answer, because I am busy fighting a storm inside my chest. Because the life I knew is suddenly being handed back to me in a way that feels like the earth shaking under my feet. And the week that Serena visits is not a week at all but a doorway into a future I never asked for, and a future that is not mine to decide. And yet I cannot help but listen as the truth reveals its shape. Because after a week of them being together as if they have always belonged to each other, Serena decides to move with him in December, and they last only a month and a half as a couple, which makes me feel both relief and a hollow ache, because I realize that what I wanted from him was never going to be enough for someone else, that perhaps my dream of a life with him was built on a fragile foundation of soft words and nice dinners. And that the entire story is not about my lover or his new partner, but about me learning to listen to the warning signs I chose to ignore. Which brings us to the moment when I decide to act, not out of vengeance but out of necessity. And I tell myself that I am not going to pretend that I did not see what was coming, and I realize that I cannot fix the past by begging for honesty or by hoping for a miracle. So I begin to collect what I can. Not the anger that lives in this town, which knows too well how hearts can be broken, but the facts, the messages, the dates, the small details that will prove what I suspect is true. that Cole has used Serena as a way to shift his life toward a pathway that ends in the United States of America, and that the green cards and the promises of a better life for someone else are what have fueled the plan to pull me into a future that was never mine to begin with. And with that realization, I decide to step away from the warmth of Moonlight Pages for a moment and walk the river path at dusk. And I take a notebook with me, and I begin to write because writing is the only way I know to tell the truth when words feel fragile and my heart feels heavier than the stones under my feet. And as I walk, I feel the weight of the town cinching around me, the whispers of neighbors not spoken aloud, the uneasy glances at the market. The way the clock on the town hall seems to laugh at me as if to say that time will reveal all, and the first act closes with a sense that my life is in danger of becoming a chapter someone else writes. Unless I seize control of the plot and begin to steer it with a careful hand toward a future I can call my own, which is the problem I face, and the problem is big, and I am in the middle of it, and I am not sure what can fix it. But I am not ready to surrender, not yet. Not while the bookshop lights burn through the long Vermont night, and the river keeps its old rhythm and my own breath steadies, as resolve returns to me like the sound of a door slowly closing behind a storm. In the second act, I begin to move, not toward revenge for its own sake, but toward a form of justice that lets me sleep at night. And the more I search for a way to balance the scales, the more I realize how many pieces there are to this puzzle. Because Cole tries to keep the truth buried by lies that are easy to tell and easy to accept when a person has something to hide. And he uses the idea of a family visit as a shield, and he uses the fear of losing his standing in town as armor. And he hides behind a smile that makes the people in Cedar Hollow think there is nothing to fear. But I am not fooled now. I have practiced looking past the charm he wears like a coat, and I begin to gather the evidence in a careful way that would not ruin everything, because I am not writing a cruel letter or a loud confession for the sake of drama. I am building a record that will hold up in daylight. The kind of record that can make a person accept responsibility without needing to be forced into a corner. And so I keep a ledger of times and places and conversations. I save the text messages that show interest that crosses a line. I note the days when the two of them disappear for long dinners or rides along the island road, where the water glitters like little glass beads on the surface. I talk to Mara, a friend who keeps the books for a local cafe and who knows how to listen without offering useless advice. And Mara tells me that I must decide what I want to teach my own heart, whether I want to scorch the earth or plant new roots. And I tell Mara that I want to plant roots, that I want to heal, that I want to keep Moonlight Pages safe from the kind of damage that comes when a life built on a lie begins to crumble. And Mara nods and says that healing is a long road, but it is better than nursing a vendetta. And I take that to heart, and I begin to chart a plan that has several parts. None of them boasted as spectacular, all of them small acts of self-preservation, such as finishing the renovations on the back room to create a small community space where people can meet and talk about books. Such as hosting a weekly author night that is free to attend because I want the town to remember what honesty sounds like when spoken aloud. Such as writing a small column for the local paper that speaks about resilience and the stubborn kindness of Cedar Hollow. And as I push forward with these tasks, the pressure of the secret starts to lift, not disappear, but transform, and I feel the weight of the past lighten in my shoulders, and I begin to sleep better. And I begin to believe that perhaps I can survive this without becoming a person I cannot recognize, which is the second act turning point, the moment when I am at my lowest and then choose to rise again in a way that feels almost miraculous. Because there is a night when Cole walks into my store with Serena already gone from his arm, and he stands with me in front of the shelves where the world feels small and the truth feels large. And I hand him a packet of letters I have written to myself over the weeks, not to him, but to the future version of me who deserves a life that has nothing to do with breadcrumb trails of deceit. And I tell him that I know everything, not in the loud way of a courtroom, but in a quiet and controlled way that leaves him with less to say than he wants to admit. And the room becomes very still, as if the town itself is listening closely for the sound of a breaking promise. And when he tries to deny it, I do not raise my voice. I simply present the evidence, and I say that I will not tell lies about what happened, but I will tell the truth about what I am going to do next. And I tell him that the truth has its own momentum and will not be stopped by excuses. And then I walk away, and I do not look back, which is a moment of strength that I have never allowed myself to touch before, and I feel a small spark of something like courage. An ember that glows when you realize you are still a person who can choose the shape of her own life. The third act is the final struggle, and it comes with a release of sorts, a decision that feels both terrifying and freeing, because when I take the stage, metaphorically and literally, I choose to confront the situation not with anger but with clarity. And this is where the story shifts from being about a broken romance to becoming a lesson in self-respect. And I decide to speak openly at the town hall meeting about what I know, a scene that does not seek to ruin Cole or Serena, but to reveal the pattern of exploitation, to expose the danger of someone using affection as a cover for a plan that is really about a move to a new country with a green card as the prize. And I share the evidence I have gathered with the room full of neighbors who know my handwriting, who know the name Moonlight Pages, who know what it means to want to believe in a life that is honest. And I tell them that I am not asking for pity. I am asking for accountability, and for a future where people can live without being misled by pretty words and promises that are not kept. And I see a change in the faces around me, a mixture of surprise and relief, because they realize that a life built on honesty is a life that does not fear the sunlight. And in that moment, Cole tries to salvage what he can by offering a ritual apology that sounds rehearsed and hollow, and I listen to him with a calm that feels unfamiliar. And when he finishes, I tell him that apologies are useful only when followed by real action, and that the real action here is that we end what should have ended long ago, and we decide to part, not with malice, but with the intention to heal, to let the other person go to their own path, and to keep my own path free from the weight of someone else's choices. And when the crowd disperses, I feel a soft wind sweep through the town square, and I sense that the gossip I once feared will now turn to memory. And that is when I discover a new normal, not one where I chase revenge, but one where I build a life with purpose, where Moonlight Pages becomes not just a place of books, but a small shelter from the storm for anyone who needs a quiet space to think, to breathe, to begin again. And I take a step toward the door and look back at the shelves that have become my fortress. And I know that I am not the same woman who stood in that kitchen and listened to a lie pretending to be a plan. I am someone who has learned to listen to her own heart and to choose a life that loves her back. A life that does not demand she become someone else in order to be loved. And as I walk out into the night of Cedar Hollow, I realize that the island has taken something from me, but I have given myself something far greater in return. I have given myself the permission to start over, to carve a new path along the river, to welcome writers, readers, and neighbors into the back room of my store where peace can grow. And perhaps, if the wind is right and the town is kind, I may even allow the possibility of another kind of love to enter my life, softly and slowly. The kind that does not demand a life on a map from the United States of America, but waits until my own life chooses me. And that is the ending I want, a ending that feels earned, a ending that feels true, and so I let the new morning rise over Cedar Hollow. I lock Moonlight Pages for the night with care, and I walk home beneath the pale light of a street lamp with the certainty that I am no longer a character in a plot designed by fear, but the author of a life that belongs entirely to me, and that is the final triumph, the quiet, almost invisible triumph, the one that changes everything forever. And in that moment I realize the work is not finished, but the course is clear. The town will still talk, the river will still sing. The shelves will still hold stories that remind me of who I am, and I know that I have survived, and that survival has become the new horizon I intend to reach. A horizon that I will cross not to chase a man or to chase a dream someone else planted in my mind, but to find the best version of myself, the version who deserves a life built on honesty, courage, and the quiet, unwavering power of a woman who chooses to heal.